America is facing an epidemic that has been wildly underreported in the media and largely ignored by society. Just in 2020, 40 transgender and gender nonconforming people have been murdered, a vast majority of which are Black and Latinx transgender women. The Human Rights Campaign has been recording this data since 2013 and has never recorded numbers this high. Numbers that are made worse by the fact that media and police reports misgender and dead name transgender and gender nonconforming people, making it more difficult to classify their deaths. Police departments also widely under-investigate these deaths. They believe that transgender women in particular live high-risk lives so that their deaths are inevitable. They believe nobody cares, so they don't handle the investigations with any urgency, and they do not have connections in these communities, so they have no people to turn to help solve these murders. This video essay will be an analysis of violence against Black transgender women in particular, the most vulnerable in the community, examining the intersectionality of the issue, defining society's response, and laying out a pathway to possible solutions. So, when we talk about transgender people, who are we talking about? We're talking about people who do not identify with the gender assigned to them at birth. This can either be male to female or female to male. So let's say somebody is born into a quote-unquote male body and they transition to female, that would be a transgender person, and vice versa. Gender nonconforming people also fit into the label of transgender, but they do not operate in a gender binary. Again, for this video essay, we'll be focusing on the experiences of transgender women. The last thing I want to say is before we jump to the issue is that being a transgender woman means a million different things for a million different trans women, and it is not about presentation, but it is about identity. Identifying as a trans woman is what makes a trans woman a trans woman. Not all trans women have the same goals for their transition, and not all trans women have the goal of passing as a cis woman, and they will not be discriminated in any way in this video essay. All trans lives will be treated equally, regardless of how they choose to present and handle their transition. Lawyer and Professor Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionalities in the 1980s to explore the oppressions that women of color face in society. The term has been expanded to encompass all aspects of a person's political and social identity and how those manifest into oppressions and privileges. For example, white women in America face oppression on the basis of their gender, but have privileges on the basis of their race. These two things cannot be separated. The experience of white women in America is colored by both. So when we're talking about Black transgender women in America, we're talking about many intersections of oppression. We're talking about racial discrimination. We're talking about discrimination on the basis of gender that is made particularly worse than it would be for cis women because of their transgender identity. We're talking about discrimination based on sexuality, because just like cisgender people, transgender people operate in many different aspects of sexuality. And we're also talking about class discrimination due to the fact that many transgender people, particularly Black transgender women, are pushed out of many opportunities and left in a subservient role in society that makes them so vulnerable to this violence. Black transgender women face violence everywhere and at all points of their life. In the home, they face verbal, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of family members and are sometimes even kicked out after disclosure. This is usually due to the religious values of the family. In the streets, we're inundated by videos and news reports of Black transgender women being attacked, ridiculed, or called out by crowds of people or strangers just for their identity as transgender women. Most recently, this happened to actress Laverne Cox and another Black transgender woman who were attacked on the streets of LA just for being transgender. In the workplace, trans women in customer service industry have to deal with transphobic customers and are expected to de-escalate the situation themselves, even if they are in harm's way. And lastly, in the sex work industry that is heavily populated by Black trans women due to the lack of educational and employment opportunities they see, violence is extremely prevalent and extremely dangerous, too often leading to murder. Men who hire Black transgender women as sex workers are often ashamed after the sex act and want to commit violence against them because they don't want the information to be disclosed. This is due to societal norms and pressures that see transgender women as men. Transgender women, just like cis women, are women, and sex with them is not gay. For trans women, violence is inescapable. In this next clip, transgender activist Ruby Cordu describes the heartbreaking reality of intimate partner violence for transgender women.
You know, it's so weird because we are queer bodies of desire, but it's such a taboo to desire these bodies, to want this flesh, and then when it hits, they are like, nobody has to know, and therefore I have to get rid of my temptation. But the reality is that we're human beings. So it's nothing that the girls did. It's that society has pushed these men who love women, period, because trans women are beautiful women, and to hide the ridicule, the possibility of being outed, that's why they gotta cover it up. The sad thing is, it always comes out. You kill a trans woman, everybody's gonna know.
What makes the issue of violence against Black transgender women even worse is the lack of support they receive from their communities. During a time of a national reckoning on racism and police brutality in America, the stories of Black transgender women have been pushed into the shadows. Instead, the media favors the stories of Black men. Even though movements like Black Lives Matter were started by queer Black women, their stories have been pushed to the side. Movements like Say Her Name seek to change that and encompass the full range of racism and police brutality in this country. Similar issues exist within the queer community, who tend to highlight the stories of cis-presenting gay men and see issues like marriage equality as the height of queer issues, as Black trans women are being murdered in the street with no word from the rest of the community. Even within homeless shelters, Black transgender women are heavily discriminated against in single-sex shelters, making it difficult for them to find a place to even sleep some nights. This is what happens in a patriarchal society built on anti-Black and anti-queer values. Black transgender women are always left at the bottom of the totem pole, having to fend for themselves. In this next clip, activist Nala Simone Toussaint describes why Black transgender women are needed in the Black liberation movement.
Black liberation must include Black trans people, period, full stop. There's an ecosystem that many benefit that trans people do not have access to. So we're looking at denial of opportunities. That is from education, safety, employment, immigration, healthcare, housing, aging, prison, military, and policies. So when we look at Black trans women, Black trans men, Black trans non-binary individual, there aren't any safety nets or policies that say, hey, your life matters.
During that little break, I changed into Celebratory Black to celebrate the depth of the system and abolition feminism. Icon and activist Angela Davis describes abolition feminism as an extension of Marxist thought that centers the experience of anti-racist and anti-capitalist organizers who tend to be women of color and queer people. Abolition feminism sees structures such as prisons and police department as inherently oppressive, so there is no need to reform them because their sole purpose has always been to discriminate. Abolition feminism also calls out concepts like the gender binary and the commodification of gender for solely existing to oppress people, particularly people of racial minorities, women, queer people, and the poor communities. Abolition feminism seeks to reimagine society in a more equitable way. This is what Black transgender women need. Black transgender women face discrimination at every intersection of their life, and one solution will not fix the violence that they face every day in the streets, at home, and in the workplace. There needs to be a complete restructuring of our society that favors not only Black transgender women, but all disenfranchised and marginalized groups. We are currently watching an epidemic ravage our country, and nothing is being done about it. This year, more transgender women were murdered than any other year on record. If our society is failing our most vulnerable people, then we are a failed society, and we are failing Black trans women. Something must be done immediately. This year, the Brooklyn Liberation March organized 15,000 people to march on the streets of New York in support of the murder of Black trans women. I'll leave you with a clip from that. Thank you.
Let the militarized police state know exactly how the fuck we feel about them. Good afternoon. My name is Leanne Fields Stewart. I use they, them, she, her pronouns, and I'm the founder of the Oprah Project. I call upon each and every one of you to make a commitment. Today, I urge you to commit that today is the very last day that transphobia will claim the lives, love,